What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the stack. Welcome back if you've been here before. I'm Neon Mushroom, and today we've got a budget EDH Commander gameplay video for you guys. Caveat on what this budget means: we've been getting some comments and concerns around the budget itself. 3 of these decks are on a $100 budget. One of them is on a $75 budget. We'll talk more about that in the opening hand segment of today's video. And there's 2 schools of people. One that doesn't know we do not count the commander in the budget of the decks. That some of the commanders should just get wildly expensive, and we find it's best to just not count the commander and basic lands in the budget of the deck. And another thing is, if you're one of those people, there's like 4 of you that have done this so far. So this is you know who you are, who goes $100 budget. Psh, that's not a budget. It is a budget. We're in franchise Magic players. We have a quite large collection pool, but quite a large collection pool between all of us, and that is a budget, and the greater Magic community also would call that a budget. If you're someone that's playing on a smaller budget than $100, then instead of going into our comment section and going, "That's not a budget, what are you guys talking about?" Maybe suggest a target budget you'd like to see. That way we know there's a demand for it, and we can maybe make a fucking video about it. Anyway, I said the F word like in the first minute of this video, so it's probably demonetized. Anyway, that's all you guys should need to know. Let's go ahead and take a look at who's playing, what they decided to play, what opening hands they decided to keep, in addition to our normal upkeep stuff.
As always, if you like this show or any of our other shows on YouTube, liking, sharing, and subscribing helps us out immensely. If you like our content and don't mind that extra mile, you can always support us over on Patreon, over at patreon.com/MTGTheStack.
This is normally where we would put the patron shout out, but we've got a special one coming because someone who should have been a patron the whole time finally became a patron, and this is someone who deserves a special patron shout out, so we're going to wait on that. We've been through almost all the patrons, so we're going to start cycling through new ones, but in the meantime, I have a little something for you guys. Thank you. It's these. If any of you play Arena, I wanted to give these away, so I'm just going to hold these at the screen, and boop. Boop. Oh yeah. And this one's good. One of those is good for 6 packs. Anyway, I'm not going to use those, so I just wanted to give them away in lieu of a patron shout out. Because time.
Comment down below any of your thoughts and feelings, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Alright, first up we've got Calvin playing Extus, Oriq, Overlord, or more specifically, he's playing for the backside Awaken the Blood Avatar. The whole goal of this deck is to be an aristocrat style build, and he wants to win the game in one of 2 ways, either to burn everyone out with the Blood Avatar tokens, or to go into some type of infinite loop in true Calvin Traeger style. Calvin's going to be keeping a 7-card hand, including Varnished Heart, Cruel Celebrant, a Fracture, Basic Plains, Basic Mountain, a Battlefield Forge, and a Myriad Landscape. Next up, we've got Mr. Guy Scott playing Toski, Bearer of Secrets. This is going to be a mono-green beatdown deck. It does have a $100 budget like most of the other decks in this pod, and it wants to use Toski out of the command zone as a way to draw as many cards as possible, all while keeping pressure on each of its opponents. Guy is also keeping a 7-card hand, including Nature's Claim, Thorn Mammoth, 3 Visits, an Arcane Signet, of Findhorn Elves, and 2 Snow-Covered Forests. After that, we have Max returning to the channel, and he's playing Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. Mind you, these decks are $100 a piece. We do not count the commanders, and Yawgmoth is a bit pricey. The way that Max decided to build this deck was just to use Yawgmoth as an insane value and combo piece, and eventually string some type of a combo together, usually using an Ashnod's Altar. Max is also a part of the No Mulligans Club, and he's keeping a Pawn of Ulamog, an Ashnod's Altar, a Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, Tragic Slip, a Snow-Covered Swamp with a different art, and a Snow-Covered Swamp with a different art from the first 2. Then finally we have me, and I will be playing Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow. For anyone who's been watching this channel for at least the last couple weeks, you know I play Yuriko as a CEDH deck as well, but I decided I wanted to try to build a budget version of the deck, and I gave myself a little bit of a, I guess you'd call it a challenge. I don't know if it's really a challenge since Yuriko is so powerful on her own, but this deck's budget comes in at just about $75 as opposed to the $100 everyone else's decks are built at. This deck just uses Yuriko the way she's intended, but the difference between this and my higher powered versions of the deck is that I'm playing effects like Arcane Adaptation, Xenograft, and Maskwood Nexus to turn all of my tiny unblockable creatures into ninjas to trigger Yuriko as much as possible. With me, that makes all 4 of us keeping a 7-card hand, and I'm keeping a Draco, Dreamcache, Wingcrafter, Gingerbrute, an Island, a Swamp, and a Command Tower. Welcome to MTG The Budget. We're gonna play a card game.
Yay!
Yay!
I'm the budget. I would like to be the bee in budget.
1, 2, 3, flip.
Budget!
It's Calvin.
You are the being budget.
It's time to did a duel. Calvin obviously won card game, so he's going to play basic plains as his land for turn, and with nothing else he'll pass to Guy, who draws his card for turn, and plays a snow-covered forest. Then Guy's going to tap for green, and he's going to cast a Fyndhorn Elves, and with no further actions he's going to pass to Max, who will draw for turn, play a snow-covered swamp, and pass to me. I'll draw my card for turn, then I'm going to play my command tower as my land for turn. I'll tap it for whatever color, because I'm going to cast a Gingerbrute, and I want to try to go to combat. But before I can do that, Max is going to tap for black and Tragic Slit my Gingerbrute. I have a response, I'm going to exile Wingcrafter from my hand so I can cast Misdirection, and I'll have that Tragic Slit target Fyndhorn Elves instead. Then, despite Max, I'll head to combat, and I'm going to attack him with my Gingerbrute. He doesn't have any blockers, so he takes 1, and we move to Calvin's turn. Calvin's going to draw, drop a Myriad Landscape tapped, and pass the turn back to Guy, who will untap, draw his card for turn, and play another snow-covered forest. Then Guy's going to tap out for 2, and he'll cast 3 visits. This will have him searching his library for another snow-covered forest. He'll put it into play, and with no further actions, he'll pass to Max. Max is going to untap, draw his card for turn, then he's going to proceed to play a not-matching snow-covered swamp, and pass the turn to me. So I'll untap, draw my card for turn, and then I'll play a basic island in my first main phase. After that, I want to keep punishing Max, so I'll attack him for 1 with Gingerbrute. He declares no blocks, so obviously I'll ninjutsu in Yuriko, and he'll take 1 commander damage. Then Yuriko triggers, I'll reveal Nether Trader, each of my opponents will take 2, and with nothing else, we'll move back to Calvin's turn, where I'll draw, play a basic mountain as his land for turn, and simply pass the turn back to Guy. Guy's going to draw his card for turn. In his first main phase, he's going to tap for 3 and cast Kodama's Reach. That'll have him searching his library for 2 basic lands. In this case, he's going to get 2 snow-covered forests. One will come into play tapped, and then the other will go to his hand, but he will immediately play it as his land for turn. Then I'll pass to Max, who will draw, and then play a 3rd snow-covered swamp, still not matching either of the other 2. He's going to tap for 3 and play Pawn of Ulamog, and with nothing else, he'll just pass the turn to me. I'll untap, draw my card for turn, I'll play a swamp in my main phase, then I'll tap that swamp for mana because I want to recast the Gingerbrute. After that, I'm going to head into combat, and Guy's wide open, so I'm going to swing both of my creatures at Guy, and he has no blocks, so that's going to have him taking 2 damage, one of them being commander damage. Then we'll trigger Yuriko once, and I'm going to reveal Mothdesh Changeling. Each of my opponents will take 1 to the Yuriko trigger, and then in my second main phase, I'll tap my island for blue, and I will cast that Mothdesh Changeling. With nothing else, I'll try to pass the turn back to Calvin. He has an action, he's going to activate Myriad Landscape, and he's going to search his library for some basic lands. In this case, he's going to get 2 basic swamps into play tapped, and with no further actions, Calvin's going to untap, upkeep, and draw his card for turn. In his first main phase, he's going to drop a Battlefield Forge, and then Calvin's going to tap for 3 mana. This is going to be so he can cast a Varnished Heart, yet another ramp piece, and with nothing else, he'll pass the turn to Guy. Guy's going to untap, upkeep, draw, then he's going to tap for 2 mana, and he's going to cast an Arcane Signet. After that, he wants to tap for 1 more and cast Basilisk Collar, and with nothing else, we'll move right back to Max's turn, where he'll untap, draw his card for turn, and play a snow-covered swamp. After that, Max is going to tap for 3 mana and cast one of his main combo pieces, Ashnod's Altar. Once that resolves, he's going to sack that Pawn of Ulamog to the altar, and that's going to make 2 colorless mana, and that's going to put Pawn of Ulamog's trigger on the stack, which Calvin has a response to. He'll tap for 2, and he'll cast Fracture, targeting the Ashnod's Altar. Max is then going to represent the 2 floating mana, but he has no responses, so the altar goes to the bin. Then Max is also going to make what he thought was a 1/1, but it's actually a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn. Then he's going to use both of those floating mana off the altar and the spawn for mana, and then tap his swamp and pay 6 life to Phyrexian mana, because he wants to cast that Crick, Son of Yawgmoth. And with no further actions, Max is simply going to pass the turn to me. I'll untap, draw my card for turn, and in my first main phase I'll play a basic island as my land for turn. Then I'm going to tap for 3 mana, and I'm going to cast Dreamcatch. This is going to work like a really bad brainstorm. It's going to have me draw 3 cards, I'll decide to put 2 back on top, and then I'll head into combat. I'll tap my Gingerbrute to give my Mothdesh Changeling flying, and I'll come in at Guy with my commander, and Max with my flying Changeling. They'll both take 1, I have 2 Yuriko triggers, so I'm going to wind up revealing a Draco, which I put back on top myself. Everyone takes 16 damage, and then I'll get a Swamp, they'll take 0 from that. Yuriko just functionally dealt 48 damage, so I decide that's enough for 1 turn and pass back to Calvin. Calvin's going to draw his card for turn, then he's going to tap for 2 and cast Cruel Celebrant. After that, he decides it's time to pass to Guy, so he'll untap, and he's going to draw his card for turn. In Guy's first main phase, he's going to tap for 4 and cast his commander, Toski, Bearer of Secrets. Now Toski is indestructible, so when he taps for 2 mana and casts Primal Might, it's going to give Toski +1/+1, and it's going to fight Crick, which is going to kill the Crick, but Toski lives because it's indestructible. Max is also supposed to gain 2 life from the fight because his creature had lifelink. We miss it, but we do catch it in just a second here. Guy decides that's enough, so he's going to pass the turn to Max. Max is going to draw his card for turn, play a snow-covered swamp, then he's going to tap for 4 mana, and during that he's going to remember to actually gain the 2 life off of the fight. Then with his 4 mana, he's going to cast Dread Return, and he's going to use it to reanimate Son of Yawgmoth. After that, he's got no further action, so he'll pass the turn to me, where I'll untap, draw my card for turn, and then I'll play a basic Swamp. After that, I'll tap for 3 mana, and I'm going to cast Arcane Adaptation, and obviously I'll be naming Ninja as the creature type. After that, I'm going to pay 0 mana and cast Ornithopter, and then I'm going to head into combat. I'm going to use Ornithopter to give Mothdash Changeling Flying. I'll tap 1 to make Gingerbrute unblockable except for by creatures with haste, and then I'll ship my whole team in at max. I actually forgot he has the Crick here, so he does block. That's going to have him gaining 2 off lifelink, but losing 2 off damage. And thanks to my Arcane Adaptation, my Gingerbrute is a ninja as well. This means that when both of these creatures connect, I get to trigger Yuriko 2 times. I'll flip the first card, and it winds up being a Dig Through Time, and the next one is a Commit to Memory. 8 plus 10 is 18, so this kills both Guy and Max. And then Calvin's going to go to 3. With nothing else, I'll try to pass to Calvin. Before I can, he's going to crack his Burnished Heart. That's going to trigger the Celebrant and drain gain me for 1. And he's going to get a Mountain and a basic Swamp into play tapped. After that, Calvin's going to untap and draw his card for turn. In his first main phase, Calvin decides he needs to gain some life, so he casts Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord. -3 is the Sorin to buy back the Burnished Heart. Then he's going to use the Cruel Celebrant and attack me for 1. It has lifelink thanks to Sorin, so I lose 1 and Calvin gains 1. And then Calvin's going to pass the turn to me. I'll untap, draw my card for turn, play a basic island as my land for turn. Then I'm going to tap for 2 black mana, and I'm going to cast that Nether Trader I got off my first Yuriko trigger. This has Shadow, so I'll go into combat. I'll attack Calvin with everything, using Ornithopter to give Mothdash Changeling Flying, and I'll pay 1 so Gingerbrute can't be blocked except for by creatures with haste. Calvin's going to block my Yuriko with Burnished Heart and then sacrifice it to search for 2 lands. This triggers Cruel Celebrant, so he'll gain 1, I'll lose 1, and then he's going to search his library for a basic Mountain and a basic Swamp. After that, we'll go to damage. Calvin's going to take 3 from the ninjas, and that puts 3 Yuriko triggers on the stack. I'll let him resolve and reveal Bajuka Bog, Amoeboid Changeling, and an island, leaving Calvin at 1 life. Then I'll go to discard and pitch an island, realize I still have 8 cards in hand, I'll pitch another island. Calvin will draw his card for turn, and then Calvin's going to tap for 2, and he'll cast Doomed Dissenter. After that, he'll tick up Sorin to 3 loyalty and deal damage to me, and then gain a life. Then he's going to do some counting and tap for a whole bunch of mana and sacrifice both of his creatures to cast Awaken the Blood Avatar. A few things happen before this actually resolves because he sacrificed 2 creatures, and Cruel Celebrant saw it, so I'll lose 2 life, and Calvin will gain 2 life. Then the Doomed Dissenter died, so he's going to make a 2/2 zombie. After that, we're actually going to resolve Awaken the Blood Avatar. I'll sacrifice Ornithopter, and he's going to make a 3/6 Avatar token. This token does have haste, so Calvin will attack me with it. It triggers and deals 3 damage, so he gains 3 off lifelink. Then he deals 3 combat damage, and he gains another 3 off lifelink, going to 10. He tries to pass to me, but before he can, I'll delve away 5 cards, tap for 3, and I'll cast Dig Through Time. This is going to have me looking at the top 7 cards in my library and picking 2 to go to hand and the rest to go to the bottom. I'm going to grab a Dimmer Infiltrator and a Sage Owl. I'll bin my Dig Through Time, then I'll untap, and I'm going to draw my card for turn. In my first main phase, I'll play Bajuka Bog as my land for turn, which lets me exile Calvin's Graveyard. Then I'm going to tap for 3 mana, 2 black and 1 blue, and I'm going to transmute my Dimmer Infiltrator. This will let me search my library for a card with equal mana value, and in this case, I'm going to get Limdul's Vault. I'll add that Limdul's Vault to my hand, and then I'm going to head into combat. I'll pay 1 mana so my Gingerbrute can't be blocked except for by creatures with haste, and then I'm going to tap Yuriko to give my Mothdash Changeling Flying, and I'll ship all 3 ninjas in at Calvin. He can't block, so we're going to go to damage. He'll take 3, and I have 3 Yuriko triggers. While they're on the stack, I'm going to cast Limdul's Vault. This is a somewhat complicated card that basically boils down to I can look at the top 5 cards in my library, and if I like them, I can rearrange them and put them back, and if I don't, I can pay a life to look at the next top 5. Once I decide on a pile this way, I take that last top 5 and put it on top after shuffling the rest into my deck. I decide on a pile that I like, I put it on top of my deck, and we have 3 Yuriko triggers. I'm going to reveal Azra Smoke Shaper, Xenographt, and Familiar's Ruse, which is well over enough to kill Calvin, leaving me as the winner of today's game. Let me guess, you're not surprised that Yuriko took the win? Neither am I. We kind of went into this pod expecting Yuriko to be the beatdown. And let's talk about why. And it starts with Yuriko is one of these commanders, and I think there's a handful of commanders like this, that you can build like really powerfully. You can make a very strong deck on a very tight budget. Some other commanders that come to my mind that you could probably do this with are like a Tatiova, maybe Winota, possibly even Tassiger, as long as you can get the mana right. There's a lot of decks that are really powerful on a super tight budget, and this is one of them. I want to talk about how the game went in no real particular order off the back of my head. I think it does make sense to start with Guy, because Guy did the mono green thing. He did some ramping. He got interacted with, unfortunately. His Fyndhorn Elves was interacted with on turn 1. You know, Max wanted to Tragic Slip my Gingerbrute, and I had the misdirection. It was my top deck. So he unfortunately got hosed there, which sucked. He was able to accelerate his mana and get Toski out, but by the time he had done that, I got a very lucky 2 flips off of my Yuriko, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But other than that, Guy really didn't show up to the party too much, and this is gonna happen with builds like Toski from time to time. Sometimes you get on the table and you start going fast and you're impossible to stop, and then sometimes you're outclassed very quickly. It just depends on how the pod goes. Next up, I'd like to go ahead and talk about Calvin. Actually, let's talk about Calvin second to last, because he did sustain himself throughout the game longer than Max did, because Max was playing Yawgmoth, which it is a $100 budget deck, but if you consider that Yawgmoth himself is like $20, it's a little bit up there. We don't count the commanders, obviously. Yawgmoth is very powerful. Even on a budget, you can get a lot of really cool combo lines going. And Max had the sauce. He had a Pawn of Ulamog and an Ashnod's Altar, which could have been enough to sustain him for a lot of the game, hadn't I flipped over 18 damage on, I think, my turn 6 flips off of Yuriko, which ended up killing him. But with his Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, and then he played it again with the Dread Return, he was poised to go very quickly. One thing you might not have noticed is that with that Crick in play, if he was able to use the Ashnod's Altar mana for anything else, he could have started to like dump his hand out every single turn. But his life total was so low that it didn't wind up being a route that he could take. There was Calvin, and Calvin's decks are normally very well tuned. I think this Extus deck is no exception. He showed up to the party, he accelerated his mana, and that's the problem he had this game. He spent so much time accelerating his mana and trying to get into his mid game or his, the early part of his late game quickly, that he wasn't able to keep up with what I was doing, and that's going to be the problem of Yuriko on any budget. When you're playing Yuriko on EDH, it's all fine and balanced because everyone's trying to be a degenerate little shit. But in lower budgets, Yuriko still has the same sequenced turn 1 drop, turn 2 Yuriko, and then profit and laugh. And that's basically what I did. So Calvin was able to sustain himself, even gain some life, and he had some really lucky flips that put him at 1. He ultimately wasn't able to wrap the game up because I was under 0 pressure for the first 6 turns of the game, unfortunately for Calvin. And then there was me. I don't really need to just explain too much. Yuriko did the Yuriko thing. I had the lucky misdirection, and I had my Arcane Adaptation. You also saw a Xenograph flip from the top. I also play Masquid Nexus. There's another card that does this thing, and what this thing does is you have a permanent, whether it's an artifact or enchantment, that makes all of your creatures into a creature type of the selected type. Or I think Masquid Nexus actually makes them all changelings, or like they're everything. It doesn't matter. The point is my creatures that connect are now ninjas, triggering Yuriko more and more. That's the big difference between my like really high dollar CEDH Yuriko deck and this one. The lower you go in the budget, the more powerful cards like Arcane Adaptation become, and I was very impressed by it. At the end of the day, I won because I was lucky. That flip for 18 damage was not a seen flip. I didn't know those cards were there. I didn't manipulate my library, so there was 18 damage on top. It just happened that way, and I got lucky, and that's a reason to play Yuriko, because every single time, in every walk of life, I can promise you that lucky beats good. It was awesome. Real quick, for anyone that made it to this late in the video, we'll be doing a community post about it. But the giveaway's over. We're getting ready to select the winners for the 2 playmats, and we'll announce those. I'm not sure how we're gonna announce them, either in a post, its own video. I'm not really sure how we're gonna do it, so we'll see when that time comes. But that said, that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.